The morning sun painted long shadows across Oakwood Avenue. It should have been an ordinary day, but what unfolded here would ignite a storm that shook the entire city. A black man in a sharp navy suit walked with purpose, carrying a leather briefcase that swayed gently with each stride. His name was David Carter, and he wasn't just another man heading to work. He was the mayor of the city, though the officer watching him from a nearby patrol car had no idea. From his cruiser at the intersection, Officer Blake Turner drummed his fingers against the steering wheel. He was new to the city, transferred just weeks ago from a small county department where the streets were quieter and the expectations lower. This place felt foreign to him. Too many rules, too many eyes watching. And when his gaze fell on David, something in him stiffened. A black man, expensive suit, walking briskly through a neighborhood Blake had already labeled in his mind as problematic. To him, it didn't fit. Suspicion replaced reason. His training should have told him to observe before acting, but his instincts had already decided. Unit 12 requesting a field check. Blake muttered into his radio. Possible suspicious subject on Oakwood near 7th. Male, mid-40s, carrying a briefcase. He flicked on his lights, the red and blue glow dancing across storefront windows. David heard the siren chirp behind him. He stopped, shoulders square, face calm, but his eyes held the kind of patience that only years of discipline could teach. He turned slowly as Blake rolled down the window. "Sir, stop right there," Blake called out. His hand hovered close to his holster. David offered a polite nod. "Officer, is there a problem?" His voice was even, steady, showing no fear. "Where you headed in such a hurry?" Blake asked, stepping out of the car. "To work," David replied simply. He gestured toward City Hall, its dome gleaming under the morning light in the near distance. "My car broke down. I'm walking the rest of the way." Blake narrowed his eyes. "I'll need to see some identification." David's brow furrowed slightly. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" "You match a description," Blake said curtly, though no such description existed. "What description would that be?" David asked, his tone calm but firm. "Don't question me," Blake snapped. "ID, now." A few pedestrians slowed their pace, glancing curiously at the scene. A woman reached for her phone, already sensing something was wrong. David breathed in deeply. "Officer, I believe I have the right to know why I'm being detained." Blake's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, invading David's personal space. Hands against the wall, now. He keyed his radio. "Unit 12 requesting backup. Non-compliant subject at Oakwood and 7th. David noticed the small red light on Blake's body camera blinking steadily. He made a mental note of the officer's badge number. Turner, 6132. Calmly, he raised his hands. Unwilling to escalate, but unwilling to shrink either. "Put your hands behind your back," Blake ordered sharply. The cold metal of the cuffs snapped around David's wrists. The sudden pressure made him wince, but he kept his composure. His wedding ring glimmered in the sun. His watch dug painfully into his skin. "Is this really necessary?" David asked, voice measured. "I've done nothing wrong." "That's for me to decide," Blake replied with a smirk. He began patting him down roughly. From David's pocket, he pulled out a phone, silencing an incoming call from the governor's office. "Expensive phone. Nice watch. How exactly do you afford these things?" David stared straight ahead, refusing to let the humiliation show. "Officer, I have the right to know the specific charge." "Big words for someone in handcuffs," Blake sneered, emptying David's pockets onto the hood of the car. A small crowd began forming now. Whispers rippled among them. Someone said, "Isn't that?" Another muttered, "What's going on here?" One woman, still recording, stepped closer. "Sir, are you okay?" Blake barked. "Step back, ma'am. This is police business." David turned his head slightly toward her. His voice carried, calm but deliberate. "Please, keep recording. For your safety, stay back." The officer shoved him toward the cruiser. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say." "I understand my rights completely," David interrupted, locking eyes with the blinking body camera. "And I am exercising my right to know the charge against me." Blake's grip tightened. Obstruction, disorderly conduct, and possession of a concealed weapon. He yanked a small object from David's briefcase. "What's this? A knife?" David's jaw clenched. "That's a letter opener." "It's neither concealed nor a weapon." The officer ignored him. He forced David's legs apart, kicking at his ankles until his forehead pressed against the hot metal of the patrol car. The crowd gasped, phones raised high, anger and disbelief spreading among them. David closed his eyes briefly, steadying himself with controlled breaths. The humiliation burned, but he would not give Blake the satisfaction of breaking. Blake leaned closer, his voice low and mocking. "Not so confident now, are you?" David remained silent. Silence was his strength. Silence was strategy. What Blake didn't know was that the man he had just handcuffed was the very person who had championed police reforms the department had resisted, the very man who had ordered body cameras to be worn. The irony was sharp, and David felt it deep. This was no ordinary stop. This was the beginning of something much larger, and every second was being recorded. The cuffs cut deeper into David's wrists as Officer Turner pressed him harder against the cruiser. Sweat trickled down his temple, though the morning air was cool. The growing crowd murmured louder now. Anger simmered in their voices. "Why is he arresting him?" Someone whispered. "He didn't do anything." "This doesn't look right." Turner ignored them. His eyes were sharp, restless, like a man convinced he had already caught a criminal. He rifled through David's wallet, pulling out credit cards, business cards, and finally a city identification badge. The officer squinted at it, tilting it under the light. The golden seal was clear, the words unmistakable, Mayor of Brookhaven. But Turner's pride refused to yield. His lip curled. "This looks fake." The crowd erupted with disbelief. A man shouted, "That's the mayor!" Phones captured every detail, the shouts growing louder as strangers recognized the handcuffed figure. David stood motionless, his breathing controlled, his eyes fixed on the body camera. Every second mattered. He wasn't just enduring the moment. He was documenting it. Another patrol car screeched up to the curb. Officer Maria Lopez stepped out, her expression cautious as she scanned the tense scene. She immediately noticed the mayor's posture, his expensive suit, the sheer absurdity of the situation. "What's happening here?" Lopez asked, her voice steady. Turner gestured dismissively. "Non-compliant subject. Possible fake ID, obstruction." Her eyes lingered on David. Calm, dignified, his wrists raw from the cuffs. Something in her chest tightened. She lowered her voice as she stepped closer. "Blake, maybe we should slow down." "I've got this handled," Turner snapped, brushing her off. The radio crackled. "Unit 12 and Unit 14 hold position. Chief Davis is en route. Do not transport the subject." "Repeat, hold position." Turner froze. His hand gripping David's arm stiffened. His face flushed red. He slammed the radio volume lower, muttering under his breath, "What the hell's the chief doing here?" David's lips curved ever so slightly into a calm smile. He said nothing, but his silence carried power. Lopez stepped closer to David, loosening the cuffs by a notch with a quiet twist. "Sir, I don't know what's going on, but you're not alone in this." David gave her a measured nod, his dignity unshaken. The crowd thickened, more people recording, some already live streaming. The scene spread across social media within minutes, the words "mayor" and "handcuffs" flooding timelines. Turner's paranoia grew. He looked at David, then at the bystanders. "You set this up, didn't you?" His voice cracked with both anger and fear. "This is some kind of trap." David finally spoke, his tone smooth and deliberate. "Officer Turner, I've complied with every lawful order. What you do now is being recorded, and it will not be forgotten." His words hit harder than any resistance could. The first black SUVs rolled to a stop at the curb. Doors opened in unison. Out stepped officials in suits, their faces grim, their movements precise. At their center was Chief Marcus Davis, his dress uniform gleaming with gold insignia. His presence silenced the street, phones lifted higher. Voices hushed. Chief Davis scanned the scene, his eyes falling on David. Handcuffed, pressed against a cruiser, surrounded by disbelief. His jaw tightened. Recognition struck instantly, followed by the kind of dread only a seasoned leader knew. "Officer Turner," Chief Davis said, his voice cutting through the air. "Do you know who you have in custody right now?" Turner straightened, puffing his chest as if ready to present evidence. "Yes, sir. A suspect for obstruction, disorderly conduct, and possession of a concealed weapon." He held up the wallet like a trophy, claims to be the mayor, but I believe these are falsified credentials. The crowd gasped louder, murmurs swept through them. Lopez stepped back, her face pale, understanding what was about to unfold. Chief Davis approached slowly, his eyes never leaving David's face, the red marks on his wrists, the calm defiance in his eyes. The weight of what had been done sank in with every step closer. Turner, still oblivious, added, "I've developed a knack for spotting imposters, Chief. This guy didn't fit. Thought he could bluff his way out." Chief Davis stopped in front of David, his voice low but clear. "Sir, for the record, state your name and position." The crowd held its breath. The silence was electric. David straightened, even with the cuffs biting into his skin. His voice rang clear and steady. "My name is David Carter. I am the mayor of this city." Gasps erupted. Phones shook as people captured the moment. Turner's face drained of color, his jaw falling open. Chief Davis turned to Lopez. "Document everything exactly as you see it. Preserve all body camera footage. Nothing is deleted." "Yes, sir," Lopez responded instantly, relief in her voice. Turner stammered, "Chief, I didn't know." "That's the problem, Officer Turner." Davis cut him off. "It's not about who he is. It's about how you treat any citizen." The truth hit like a hammer. The crowd's anger turned into a roar. Turner stood frozen, the weight of his mistake crashing down on him like an avalanche. David remained calm, his dignity unshaken, even as the chaos unfolded around him. This was no longer just an arrest. This was a reckoning. The street corner had transformed into a theater of truth. The mayor stood cuffed, the chief towering beside him, the crowd swelling in disbelief. And in that moment, the fragile wall protecting Officer Turner's authority began to crack. A news van rolled up, satellite dish rising toward the sky. Reporters spilled out, cameras ready. The live streams buzzing online had already summoned them. The words "Mayor in handcuffs" flashed across local feeds, spreading like fire. Turner's hands twitched at his sides. Sweat beaded along his forehead. He scanned the cameras, the crowd, and finally David, who stood perfectly still, his calm silence heavier than any protest could have been. Chief Davis raised a hand, his voice steady but commanding. "Remove the handcuffs." Turner hesitated, his pride warring with the order. "Sir, if I could just explain—" "Remove them," Davis repeated, his tone sharp enough to slice through Turner's excuses. With trembling fingers, Lopez stepped forward, unlocking the cuffs and handling them as evidence. Red welts marked David's wrists, the skin raw. He adjusted his suit jacket with dignity, every movement deliberate, every second reinforcing the power shift. The governor's convoy arrived next, sleek black SUVs forming a protective wall. From the central vehicle stepped Governor Elaine Warren, her presence undeniable, her expression cold and cutting as she surveyed the scene. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others shouted in fury, but all eyes were locked on the confrontation playing out before them. "Chief Davis," the governor called firmly, "what is happening here?" The chief's reply was professional yet heavy with shame. "Governor, this is a grave mistake. Mayor Carter was detained without cause." The governor's sharp gaze shifted to Turner. "By whom?" Turner stiffened, trying to reclaim his authority. "Governor, I believed I was acting on probable cause." The subject matched suspicious behavior. He resisted and "Enough," the governor snapped. Her voice carried the authority of the state itself. "This isn't suspicion. This is profiling." The crowd roared in agreement. Phones shook in the air, recording every syllable. David raised a hand, silencing the noise with a simple gesture. His voice was calm, steady, and devastatingly clear. "Governor, Chief Davis, people of this city, what happened here today isn't about me as a mayor. It's about every person who has faced injustice for no reason other than how they look, or where they walk, or what someone assumes about them." The murmurs turned into silence. Every eye, every camera lens was fixed on him. Turner's chest heaved as if trying to breathe in air that no longer belonged to him. His mind raced for excuses, for escape, but the walls closed in tighter with every word David spoke. "This officer," David continued, his eyes meeting the body camera directly, "saw a man in a suit and decided he didn't belong. He used authority not to protect but to humiliate. But we put systems in place for this very reason. Body cameras, civilian oversight, accountability." Each word landed like a hammer, not shouted, not angry, but calm and undeniable. Chief Davis nodded gravely. "All footage will be preserved. Internal Affairs will launch an immediate investigation. Nothing will be hidden." The governor's security detail spread out, controlling the crowd as chants began to rise. Justice for all. Justice for all. Turner's face crumbled under the weight of exposure. He muttered, barely audible, "I didn't know." David turned to him. His tone sharper now, the words pointed like blades. "That's the tragedy, Officer Turner. You didn't need to know who I was. You only needed to treat me as a citizen. And you failed." The crowd erupted again, louder than before. The truth was now undeniable. For Turner, it wasn't just a mistake. It was the beginning of the end. But for David, it was only the beginning of a reckoning that would change the city forever. The crowd eventually dispersed, but the story did not. By nightfall, the video of David Carter in handcuffs had already gone viral. The hashtags Dr. Mayor in cuffs and Justice for David surged to the top of social media. News anchors debated it in urgent tones. Civil rights leaders demanded answers. Ordinary citizens filled comment sections with outrage. Inside City Hall, the atmosphere was electric. A hastily convened emergency session gathered legal advisors, community leaders, and department heads. David sat at the center of it all, his wrists still marked from the cuffs, his demeanor calm but resolute. "This is not just about me," David said, his voice firm. "This is about trust in our system. If the mayor can be profiled and humiliated, what happens to everyone else with no cameras watching?" The words struck deep. Silence filled the chamber. Then one by one, people nodded. The city attorney leaned forward. "We'll launch a full investigation immediately. Internal Affairs will interview every officer involved, and every second of body camera footage will be secured." Chief Davis agreed, his face heavy with the weight of responsibility. "I'll personally see to it. No tampering, no excuses. Every frame will be reviewed." Meanwhile, in a dim office at police headquarters, Internal Affairs agents watched Turner's body camera footage on a large screen. The video was worse than expected. Turner's tone was mocking, his language condescending, his actions unnecessarily forceful. He had even muted his audio at points, an outright violation of department policy. One investigator rewound a section. "Watch his face here," she said, pointing. "He sees the ID, he knows." Another leaned forward. "And then he escalates anyway. That's deliberate. It wasn't just a mistake. It was misconduct, calculated, repeated, evidence piled up quickly." Complaints from Turner's previous department surfaced. 7 allegations of profiling, all dismissed without follow-up. Text messages from his old patrol group revealed crude jokes about keeping certain people in line. The puzzle pieces formed a disturbing picture. Back at City Hall, David reviewed the evidence with quiet intensity. "This isn't about one bad officer," he said. "It's about a system that ignored red flags and allowed this behavior to continue. If we don't address that, nothing changes." The city attorney agreed. "We'll need to reopen every arrest Turner made. And not just here, his old department too. If patterns exist, they must be exposed." The decision was unanimous. Every case he touched would be reviewed. Justice demanded it. As news broke of Turner's history, outrage grew louder. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, holding signs that read "Accountability now" and "No one above the law." Others chanted David's words, "Every citizen deserves the same protection." Inside his office late at night, David stared at the city skyline. The lights shimmered against the glass, but his reflection was sharper still. He remembered the moment the cuffs locked around his wrists, the humiliation, the sting. He could have revealed his position immediately and ended it. But he hadn't. He'd let the system run its course, because that was the only way to prove whether reforms had teeth or were just words. And now, the world was watching. The next morning, David faced the press. Cameras flashed as he stood at the podium, suit slightly wrinkled, refusing the polish of image consultants. Authenticity mattered more. "This morning," he began, "I experienced what too many of our citizens face every day. I was stopped, searched, and arrested without cause. As your mayor, I have the platform to demand accountability. Many others do not. That is why we fight for reform." The crowd fell silent, hanging on his words. "This is not about vilifying every officer," David continued. "Many serve with honor and distinction. But we cannot deny that bias exists. It affects decisions, it affects lives, and it erodes trust. We must confront it head-on." He outlined immediate steps: a full investigation, Turner's suspension pending review, random audits of body camera footage, and the creation of a civilian oversight board with real authority. Reporters shouted questions. but David's voice carried above them, calm and steady. This is not about punishing one man. It is about ensuring a system works for everyone. Accountability, transparency, and justice, those are not optional. They are required. The words became headlines within the hour. Citizens who had once doubted reforms now leaned forward with new belief. The mayor wasn't just talking policy. He was living it. And in the precinct's interrogation room, Turner sat across from Internal Affairs, his shoulders slumped, his arrogance drained. "I didn't know he was the mayor," he muttered weakly. The investigator leaned in, eyes cold. "That's exactly the point. You shouldn't need to." The city buzzed with anticipation. For weeks, the incident had dominated every conversation, every headline, every broadcast. Now the day had come. The public hearing. Reporters crowded outside the civic auditorium, their microphones thrust towards citizens spilling in. Protesters held banners demanding justice, while supporters of reform chanted David Carter's words like a rallying cry. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, as if the entire city was holding its breath. At the front sat the review board, senior officials, community representatives, and legal advisors. At the center sat David, not as a victim seeking revenge, but as the city's leader ensuring fairness. His presence symbolized that accountability was bigger than one man's humiliation. Then the doors opened. Blake Turner entered with his union representative. Gone was the swagger, gone was the bravado. His suit looked stiff, his shoulders slumped, and his eyes darted nervously around the room. The man who once barked orders now looked like a shadow of himself. The chairperson's voice echoed through the chamber. "Officer Turner has requested to make a statement before formal proceedings begin. Mr. Mayor, do you object?" David shook his head. "Let him speak." Turner unfolded a piece of paper with trembling hands. His voice quivered as he began. "Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I want to express my regret for what happened on Oakwood Avenue. It was a misunderstanding that escalated unnecessarily. My actions do not reflect my values. I apologize for any embarrassment caused." The words hung flat in the air. Hollow. Unconvincing. Apologizing for embarrassment, not misconduct. For misunderstanding, not profiling. David said nothing. He simply studied Turner's face, his silence sharper than any rebuke. The board wasted no time. Internal Affairs Captain Harris leaned forward. "Officer Turner, your body camera shows you said the mayor matched a description. What specific description were you referring to?" Turner shifted uncomfortably. There had been reports of suspicious activity in the area. "Answer the question directly," Harris pressed. "What description did the mayor match?" Turner's mouth opened, but no words came. His silence spoke volumes. The captain tapped a button. On the large screen, Turner's text message appeared. "Got a guy playing dress-up on Oakwood. Watch me take him down a notch." Gasps filled the room. Turner's face went pale. "Officer," Harris continued coldly, "please explain what you meant by playing dress-up." Turner's voice cracked. "It was just officer talk, Harris repeated flatly. 7 civilian complaints in Mapleton County, all involving black men, all dismissed. And your words here? This isn't officer talk. This is bias." The dismantling continued for hours, case by case, video by video. Every inconsistency, every violation, every ignored complaint laid bare. Supervisors who had buried reports were named. The systemic rot that shielded Turner was dragged into the light. Finally, the chairperson turned to Turner directly. "Officer, in your own words, why did you stop Mayor Carter that morning?" For a moment, the room was silent except for the clicking of cameras. Turner looked at David, then down at the table. His rehearsed excuses had all collapsed. He didn't look like he belonged there, Turner admitted softly. Not in that suit. Not in that neighborhood. The words cut through the air like a blade. David leaned forward, speaking for the first time. His voice was calm but heavy with meaning. "Would you have stopped me if I were white?" Turner opened his mouth, then shut it. He had no answer. The silence that followed was deafening. The board's decision was swift and unanimous. Termination of employment. Immediate referral to the district attorney for potential civil rights violations, and a full review of his previous cases. Turner's career had ended in disgrace. But more importantly, the city had drawn a line in the sand. David Carter rose slowly from his seat, adjusting his suit jacket. The cameras clicked furiously as he addressed the chamber. This is not about punishing one man. It's about ensuring no citizen is treated as I was. Accountability must apply to everyone, mayor or student, doctor or cashier. That is how justice works. The crowd erupted in applause. For the first time since the incident, hope outweighed anger. But David knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning of something much larger. The weeks after the hearing transformed the city. What had begun as a humiliating arrest for David Carter had grown into a movement. The reforms pushed forward with urgency. New training programs launched, oversight boards gained real authority, and officers were held to standards that had teeth instead of loopholes. 6 months later, the changes were visible everywhere. Civilian complaints had dropped sharply. Community trust surveys rose higher than anyone expected. Even longtime critics admitted the city felt different, safer, fairer, more connected. David stood before the new Community Safety Training Center, ribbon in hand, cameras flashing all around him. Behind him, a digital display showcased statistics that told the story. Complaints down 40%, community satisfaction up 35%, officer retention improved 28%. This is not an end, David said, voice carrying across the crowd. This is a beginning. What happened to me forced us to confront truths we could no longer ignore, and now we act. Every officer who serves this city will receive training in bias recognition, de-escalation, and community engagement. Every citizen will know that body cameras and oversight boards protect them as much as they protect the badge. This is accountability in action. The crowd cheered, but David's eyes scanned the faces. He saw residents who once distrusted the uniform now nodding in cautious hope. He saw officers standing straighter, their pride no longer in unchecked power but in renewed trust. And he saw children watching wide-eyed, perhaps imagining a future where encounters with police didn't begin with fear. But the story wasn't finished. Late one evening, nearly a year after the arrest, David sat in his office, papers scattered across his desk. The city skyline glowed outside his window. A knock interrupted his focus. His assistant stepped in, hesitant. "Mr. Mayor," she said softly, "there's someone here to see you." "Blake Turner." David paused, pen resting in his hand. "Send him in." The man who entered was not the officer who once pressed him against a cruiser. Turner looked smaller now, his once rigid posture replaced with humility. He wore plain clothes, no badge, no weapon, just a weary expression etched by months of reckoning. "Thank you for seeing me," Turner began, his voice low. David gestured toward a chair. "What can I do for you?" Turner sat, folding his hands. "I'm not here to ask for my job back. That's gone. I came to apologize. Not the kind of apology I read from paper at the hearing. A real one." David leaned back, listening silently. "Losing everything forced me to face things I never questioned," Turner admitted. "I saw threats where there weren't any. I judged people by neighborhoods, by skin, by suits they wore. I've been working with a counselor, and with a nonprofit that brings officers and communities together. I tell them what I did wrong. I admit what I never admitted to myself. It doesn't erase it, but maybe it prevents another mistake." David studied him, his face unreadable. Finally, he said, "Acknowledging the problem is the first step. Redemption isn't about words, it's about work. If you're doing the work, then perhaps some good can still come of it." Turner nodded. "It changed me, Mr. Mayor, not just my career, me." When he left, David stood at the window watching the city lights flicker. His eyes drifted to the framed handkerchief on his wall, the one he carried the day of his arrest. A reminder of humiliation, yes, but also of strength. Not a trophy, but a catalyst. The next morning, David walked through the same neighborhood where it all began. He saw an officer greeting an elderly resident by name, asking about her grandson's college plans. A young boy watched curiously, not with fear but with interest. David met the officer's eyes, exchanging a nod of respect. Simple, mutual, powerful. Because true power was not in avoiding accountability. It was in ensuring accountability existed for everyone. And in that simple exchange on that familiar street, the city's transformation was clear. Suspicion had been replaced by partnership. Fear had given way to respect. The story that began with handcuffs had become a blueprint for change. And it was only the beginning.